I have never believed in money rituals. At least not the way they're portrayed in West African movies, where people chant incantations, spill blood, and suddenly piles of cash appear. However, what I witnessed during my boarding school years convinced me that dark rituals for wealth might actually exist. After my father passed away, my dreams of attending a military secondary school as he had planned for me died with him. My mother instead enrolled me in a boarding school not too far from our home. I arrived late on my first day, around 9 p.m., due to several delays. The security guard at the gate escorted my mother and me to the male hostel master's office. He was a stern-looking man with tinted glasses that obviously concealed a damaged eye. In his office, 2 senior students knelt with their hands raised in punishment. Their long-sleeved uniforms marked them as SS2 students. Without much discussion, the hostel master assigned me a temporary room to sleep in for the night. It was strangely beautiful, far more elegant than I had expected, but the loneliness that came with it was suffocating. The next day, in class, I overheard some students talking about submitting an assignment to someone they called Night Vision. The name immediately struck a chord. It had to be the hostel master from the night before. Curious, I started a conversation with a classmate and asked about him. That was when I learned that Night Vision was both the male hostel master and the school's chemistry teacher. The 2 students I had seen being punished were named Jude and Silas. I wanted to ask more, but before I could, a female classmate walked in and informed me that I had been summoned to the school's admin block. The summons was just to finalize my registration, room number, student ID, and the school handbook. After classes, a classmate named Gabriel offered to show me around. Instead, he led me to the back of the cafeteria, where an abandoned old kitchen stood. Waiting there were Jude and Silas, the same seniors from the previous night. The moment they saw me, they grinned like madmen. They recognized me immediately and welcomed me with an unexpected show of generosity, offering me meat, alcohol, and cigarettes, things I had no interest in. I refused. Something about them unsettled me. The meat, for example, was served in a disposable pack that looked suspiciously like something stolen from the kitchen. I asked them what had happened the night before. They only laughed and called it a small price to pay. According to them, 2 nights before, they had heard the distant cries of a baby coming from the bush. That was when they decided to take their chances at wealth. The legend of the bush baby was well known. It walks the bush paths at night, carrying a mat and a lamp, and if you can defeat it and steal its mat, keeping it for 7 days, you will gain unimaginable wealth. But beware, 1, you must fight the baby naked. Failure to do so will result in madness. 2, you must keep the mat for 7 days. Losing it before then means death. 3, the lamp is of no consequence. Jude and Silas shared this story with an air of pride, as though they had uncovered some great secret. But I knew the full legend. They had left out one crucial rule, the 7-day no-sleep condition. They explained that the night before they had attempted to sneak out of the school but were caught by Night Vision before they could jump the fence. However, once he released them, they still managed to escape around 11 p.m. and returned at 1 a.m. Gabriel asked how it had gone. They grinned, unbuttoned their shirts, and peeled back strips of duct tape from their chests. Underneath, they each revealed a small piece of thick cloth. Jude had grown up poor, while Silas came from a wealthy family. Their plan was simple. Jude would be the one to steal the baby's mat and claim the riches. However, things took an unexpected turn. When they reached the bush, the crying grew louder. They followed it until they saw something small and hunched over, walking slowly through the darkness. The baby clutched a woven mat and a tiny lantern that flickered with an unnatural blue flame. Jude attacked first. He lunged at the creature and felt something snap beneath his grip. The baby screamed, a sound so shrill, so inhuman, that Silas nearly ran. But Jude overpowered it. He grabbed the mat and prepared to flee. That was when it spoke. Why not both? The voice was wrong. It was deep, ancient, layered. Not the voice of a child. Won't you also like to be rich? The moon shifted, casting more light on the creature, and they saw the truth. It wasn't a baby. It was a small, ancient man, a dwarf with hollow, sunken eyes. I will make you a deal, it rasped. You do not need the whole mat. Just take a piece, cut a small part for yourself, and give me the rest so your friend can contest too. Silas agreed. After all, Jude had won his fight. Surely he could do the same. And so Silas took his turn. The dwarf did not resist. It simply smiled as Silas ripped a piece of the mat for himself. They laughed as they told their story, chewing meat and drinking as if they hadn't just faced something beyond human comprehension. I kept waiting for them to mention the no-sleep rule, but they never did. The bell rang for after-school lunch, and we had to leave. The next morning before dawn, chaos erupted in the boys' hostel. Screams echoed from the top floor. Students rushed to see what was happening. Jude was convulsing violently on the floor, foam bubbling from his mouth. It took 4 boys to hold him down. He was immediately taken to the school clinic. Moments later, we learned that Silas had also been admitted. For 2 days, no one was allowed to see them. Then, on the 3rd day, they requested to speak with us. Behind closed doors, they revealed identical stories. In their sleep, the bush baby had returned. Only now, it was impossibly strong. It beat them mercilessly in their dreams. But just before it could snatch the mat from their grasp, they always woke up. Their eyes widened in horror when I told them what they had failed to realize: the 7-day no-sleep rule. If the baby takes your mat, whether in reality or in your dreams, you die, I said. Panic set in, but there was still hope. They had already endured 4 days. If they could just stay awake for 3 more, they would survive. Gabriel and I did everything we could to help. He ran to the school mall and bought them loads of chewing gum. I suggested that Jude's father bring his PlayStation 2 console, something to keep them distracted. It worked. Day 4, day 5, day 6. On the 7th day, everything fell apart. A nurse, on her own accord, slipped sleeping pills into their meals. She believed that, despite their improving conditions, they needed rest. We didn't even find out until the end of the term. That night, the school was awakened by Jude and Silas's screams. They tore their room apart, frantically searching for something. When I arrived, they were trembling, drenched in sweat. They had both fallen asleep at the same time. The bush baby had come for them again. Jude barely escaped, but Silas, he wasn't so lucky. He had felt helpless as the being overpowered him, snatching the mat from his grasp. When they checked under the duct tape on their chests, Jude's piece was still there. Silas's was gone. 3 days later, Silas was dead. Jude was never the same again. The once lively troublemaker became a quiet, emotionless shell of himself. He took his exams early, started a shoemaking business, and disappeared from our lives. Years later, I heard that he had become incredibly wealthy. He invested in anything and everything: oil and gas, fashion, pharmaceuticals, consumer goods, even an electric car manufacturing company. But he lived in total isolation. Boarding school was one of the darkest periods of my life. And this wasn't even the worst thing that happened there. There's something in my room, and it's getting closer. I moved into this apartment 3 weeks ago. It was the cheapest place I could find near campus, and after weeks of searching, I was just happy to have a roof over my head. It wasn't much, just a tiny room with a bed, a desk, and an old wooden wardrobe that creaked every time I opened it. The first night, I noticed something strange. As I lay in bed about to drift off, I heard a sound, a faint scratching noise, like fingernails against wood. It was coming from inside the wardrobe. I froze. I stared at the wardrobe, my breath catching in my throat. My mind raced, trying to find a logical explanation. Maybe it was just the old wood settling. Maybe it was a rat. I forced myself to turn over, shutting my eyes. Ignore it. It's nothing. The sound stopped. The next few nights were normal. I started thinking I had imagined it. But then, a week in, I woke up to something far worse. It was the middle of the night. My body was stiff, my limbs heavy. I could see my room, dimly lit by the streetlight outside my window. I could see the wardrobe standing across from me, its doors slightly ajar. And I could see something inside it. A shape hunched over, shifting slightly, as if trying to make itself smaller. I couldn't make out details, but I knew it was there, watching. I wanted to move. I wanted to run, but my body wouldn't respond. Then the door creaked, slowly, painfully slow. The figure in the wardrobe moved. I heard breathing, shallow, ragged breaths, not my own. Then it stepped out. It didn't walk like a person. It crawled, its limbs bending at unnatural angles as it dragged itself across the floor. The sound of its movement was wet, sticky, like something crawling out of mud. It stopped at the foot of my bed. I couldn't breathe. I couldn't scream. I could only watch as its head tilted to the side, the darkness hiding its face, but I could feel its gaze boring into me. Then it reached out. Its fingers were long, thin, wrong. They hovered just above my chest, so close I could feel the cold radiating off them. A whisper, right by my ear. "You let me out." My heart slammed against my ribs. I shut my eyes. Wake up, wake up, wake up. Darkness. Then air rushed back into my lungs. I sat up, gasping. My body was slick with sweat. The room was silent. The wardrobe was closed. I told myself it was a dream. But this morning, when I got up and walked past the wardrobe, I saw something on the floor. A trail of wet, muddy handprints. And the doors? They were open. I should have left that morning, but I didn't. I convinced myself it was just a nightmare. Stress, exhaustion, it had to be. That night, I locked my wardrobe. I pushed my desk against it. I made sure there was no way it could open again. Then I went to bed, and that's when I had the worst dream of all. I woke up, or at least I thought I did. The room was dark, but I could see everything. The walls, the window, the locked wardrobe, and the figure standing beside my bed. It was pressing down on my chest. I could feel its weight, crushing me. Its hands were planted firmly against me, its head hanging low. Its breath came in short, labored gasps, like it was struggling. Like it was sweating. The pressure increased. I thought my ribs would crack. Then it did something new. It turned and walked toward the door. Not crawled. Walked. The door opened and it left. My exact door. My exact room. I woke up again. For real this time. I could move. I sat up quickly, gasping for air. I felt lightheaded, like I had just escaped drowning. My chest ached. Something felt wrong. I reached for the light switch and turned it on. Everything looked normal, but my body still felt heavy. I threw the blanket off, and that's when I saw them. 2 wet handprints on my chest, perfectly outlined, like something had been holding me down, like something had been sweating. I scrambled out of bed, my hands shaking. I didn't care if it was real or not anymore. I wasn't staying. I shoved everything I could into my bag, clothes, books, anything I could grab in seconds. I didn't even put my shoes on properly. I didn't spend more than 4 more hours in that building. I didn't care where I was going. I just had to leave. I walked out into the cold night, gripping my bag like a lifeline. I never looked back. And I never went back. I don't know who lives in that room now. I don't know if they've heard the scratching or if they've seen the wardrobe doors open on their own. But I know one thing. I didn't let it out. It let itself out. And I think it's still looking for something or someone.